One of the humorous journals. All of our journals are humorous. Any paragraph or column in which a pleasing strain of the ludicrous does not appear is blacked out by the censor. It isn't always very clever, but it has to be as clever as can be reasonably expected for 32 6 a week. £1.12 6. The rate fixed by the central governing body, said the other. Every man on leaving school receives a wage of 32 6 a week, and in this way all the old class distinctions have vanished. The yawning spaces between the clever and the foolish, the industrious and the indolent have been bridged. The sum was fixed, this may interest you, because it was found that a narrow majority existed of those earning less than that amount, and the injustice of the change was therefore lessened. Not sure that I quite follow you, he said politely, but it's exceedingly good of you to take so much trouble. I'm not delaying you from your work. So long as I do 30 hours a week, it doesn't matter when I do them. An ideal existence. Exactly, cried the man with triumph. That's what we have been aiming at, just what we have achieved. Nothing short of perfection is good enough for us. If there's any sensible criticism you can pass upon our present conditions, we shall be ready to consider it. That reminds me, he exclaimed, I miss the poor, especially at this time of the year when I feel generous. But of course it's all to the good to have altered that. Only where are the children? I should like to see some children. You'll have to manage without them unless you can get a special permit from the Minister of Education in Whitehall. In the old days, parents were, I believe, allowed to bring up children in almost any manner they thought fit, and some of the results were exceedingly unsatisfactory. Let me see. He considered for a few moments, detaining the other with one hand. His brow wrinkled with the effort of thought. Pinner, he exclaimed. I rather think Pinner is the nearest. You'll find about 5,000 youngsters in the infant barracks there. I can do with less, he remarked. What I want is about 3 or 4 nephews and nieces, if possible. Just enough to play at charades and musical chairs and games of someone going out of the room. The other smiled pityingly. Going out of the room whilst the rest think of a man alive. And then the person who has been outside comes in and puts questions and gradually guesses who it is. Surely they still play at it. My dear sir, under the old scheme, a child wasted valuable years. Now we arrange that not a single opportunity shall be missed. Go to any of the barracks and you will find that every child, providing it has begun to speak, can give quite a pretty little lecture on, say, milk, with all the latest scientific facts relating to the subject. Each youngster is made to realize the value of moments. Time is flying are the words that form the only decoration on the walls of the dormitories. I have it, he cried. Folk going by stopped and raised eyebrows at this outbreak of irritation. A small crowd gathered. Now I see why you make your journals amusing. You learn nearly everything in your early days, but you omit to learn how to laugh. When you are grown up, you have to adopt the most determined means in order to... He went on with excitement as he addressed the increasing circle around him. The frowns and the murmurs did not prevent him from speaking his mind, and he commenced to whirl his arms. I tell you what it is. I came here expecting to find happiness. The present didn't suit me, and I thought I'd try the past and the future. I declare you're worse than anything. The crowd closed in. The man to whom he had been speaking tugged at his sleeve. He gave a sharp jerk and disengaged himself. And the conceit of you is the most unsatisfactory feature of the whole situation. What have you to be proud about? Here you are in the new year, and not one of you is showing any special signs of amiability towards his fellow man. You can't look back to a cozy family gathering. You have bought no presents, and you have received none. If you knew how much you had lost, you would never rest until you had. But I suppose you're too sensible. You don't like to be accused of that. They took him at a run through the straight street that in his time had been curved and called Regent, crying as they went, "To the fountain, to the fountain!" Almost dazed by the swiftness and nearly choked by the grip at the back of his collar, he nevertheless recognized that their intentions were not friendly, and he endeavored to struggle and make escape. He heard the sound of ice being smashed. Now then, boys, all together. A dozen pair of hands competed for the honor of ducking him. They seized his wrists, elbows, head, ankles. Can't read this, said the voice. You've written it so badly. Not my best penmanship, he admitted tremblingly. What it's intended for is, he wrote it afresh, if I'm giving too much trouble, you can tear it up and let me go. I can easily find what I want once I'm outside. How's the time going? The smallest boy, overcoated and muffled to the eyes, had been dispatched to meet visitors at the station, and a good deal of anxiety existed in the household when one of his sisters mentioned a grisly fear that he would talk too much on the way, betraying facts which should be hidden and guarded as secrets. His mother declared Frankie had too much common sense to make a blunder of the kind, and giving a final look round in the dining room, expressed a hope that there would be room for everybody. She had no doubts concerning food supplies, and indeed anyone who peeped into the kitchen and saw the two noble birds there would have been reassured on this point. The cold pies formed an excellent reserve in case the birds should be reduced by the invaders to ruins. The young man, looking on without being seen, noticed the eldest girl, whom he loved, standing perilously on a high chair to give a touch with duster to a frame, and nearly screamed an urgent appeal for care. It was a relief to see her step down to the safety of the carpet. He was wondering whether he would come into the pleasant household, and found some encouragement in the circumstance that she took a particular interest in her reflection in the mirror. Left alone for a moment, she selected his card from the rest, which crowded the mantelpiece, and kissed it. She also peeped behind the screen and counted the crackers there when her mother called, requesting to be done up at the back. She went immediately. A dear girl. He could scarce remember why or how he had found an excuse for quarreling. Voices of youngsters outside the front door, and the small brother rattling at the letterbox in his impatience. One of the two maids answering found herself as nearly as possible bowled over in the narrow hall, saving herself by clutching at a peg of the hat stand and allowing the inrush to sweep by and through to the drawing room. All the children loaded with parcels, which they dropped on the way, and all shouting, many happy returns, and demanding the immediate production of an aunt and several cousins, paying no regard whatever to the reminders from elders that they had formerly promised to behave like little ladies and gentlemen. The hostess came down in a stately way, pretending to be unaware of the fact that she was wearing a new dress. The visitors had experienced some amazing adventures on the journey, and they told them in chorus, with many interruptions given in solo form and made up of urgent amendments concerning unimportant details. Such funny people they had met on the train, to be sure. Somehow at this time of the year one always encountered the most extraordinary folk. And just as they started, who should come rushing along the platform, just too late to catch the train, but Mr. "Oh, here you are," turning to the eldest girl, who had entered the room, to be instantly surrounded and tugged in every direction by the youngsters. "We were just telling your mother that your friend—" "Oh, look at her blushing. We'll put dinner back 20 minutes, said the mother, interposing on her daughter's behalf. "That will give him time if he catches the next." "Perhaps he never meant to come by that train," said Uncle Henry. "Very likely he's gone off somewhere else. One can never depend on these bachelors." "Tease away," said the girl courageously. "To tell you the truth, I rather like it." "In that case," remarked the uncle, "I decline to proceed. If I can't give annoyance, I shall simply shut up. Supposing I have a kiss instead." Tragic moments for the children, who were being released from the control of neck wraps and safety pins and rubber shoes, for, apart from the tantalizing scent of cooking, they had to endure the trial of saying nothing about the parcels brought. They clustered around the eldest girl, knowing this to be the surest quarter for entertainment, and she would have found a dozen arms few enough for the embraces they required. Some of their questions she answered as though her mind were absent, and she glanced now and again, when everybody was talking, at the clock on the mantelpiece. A sharp knock at the front door made smiles come again to her features. The mother gave a warning word to the kitchen, and met the young man in the hall, where the boys were helping him in the task of disengaging himself from his overcoat by pulling at it in all directions. He could not express his regrets at the missing of the train, but everyone knew what motor omnibuses were, and as he shook hands formally with the eldest girl, who appeared rather surprised, remarking to him, "Oh, is that you?" An aunt began a moving anecdote concerning one of these conveyances, which she had boarded on a recent afternoon opposite St. Martin's Church. She asked the conductor, as distinctly as she could speak, whether it went to Adelaide, and she felt certain that he replied, "Yes, lady," but, happening to glance out later, found herself whirling along Marylebone Road, whereupon she, with great presence of mind, took her umbrella, prodded the conductor in the small of his back. "If you please, dinner is served." There were chairs at the long table that had the shy appearance of having been borrowed from the bedroom, but only one of the children made a remark concerning this, and she found herself told that another word from her would result in a lonely return to home forthwith. They all declared they had plenty of room, and Uncle Henry accepted with modesty a position near to the birds, with the comment that he could always manage to eat a couple. Perhaps the others would not mind looking on whilst he enjoyed the pleasures of the table. The children, now accustomed to Uncle Henry's humor, declined to be appalled by this threat, and indeed challenged him, offering the prize of 1 penny if he should consume the contents of the dishes, bones and all. They stopped their ears whilst he sharpened the big knife, and when he said, "Now, has anyone got any preference?" The grown-ups gave a fine lesson in behavior by declaring that they would be content with whatever portions were sent down to them. The maid waiting at table exhibited evidence of mental aberration over the task of handing plates in the right order of precedence. But wireless telegraphy from her mistress and from the eldest daughter gave instructions and averted disaster. Do look after yourself, Uncle Henry. Uncle Henry asserted that, but for this reminder, he would have neglected to fill his own plate, and one of the children, unable to reconcile the extreme selfishness hinted at in an earlier stage with the astonishing effacement now proclaimed, stared at him open-mouthed. The same child later on, after expressing loudly his determination not to be frightened, when the plum pudding over a month old and the last of it, a harder task, and the last of it, The same child later on, after expressing loudly his determination not to be frightened when the plum pudding, over a month old and the last of its race, was brought, surrounded by a purple blaze, found performance a harder task than that of hypothetical daring, and bearing his little head in the lap of the eldest daughter, gave way to tears. Declining to resume the appearance of serenity until the flames had been blown out, he regained complete self-possession on finding in the portion served out to him a bright silver sixpence, and announced his intention of purchasing with that sum Drury Lane Theatre, together with the pantomime for the current year. The elder children listened with tolerance and gave a nod to the grown-ups, showing that they knew the sum would be altogether insufficient. Well, said Uncle Henry, after he had resolutely turned his head away from the offer of a second meringue, if I never have a worse dinner, I shan't complain. Beautifully cooked, agreed the young man. Credit to whom credit is due, asserted the hostess generously. If Mary there hadn't superintended. Mother dear, protested the eldest girl. Great jokes in trying to induce the ladies to smoke, but the men were left alone together with the eldest son of the family, who had not yet taken to cigarettes and was strongly recommended by the others never to begin. The eldest son found his views on tobacco on the work of borough councils, on parliamentary procedure and other topics, listened to with great deference by the young man visitor, who declared there was a great deal in the opinions held by the son of the family, with which he felt able to agree. Nevertheless, it was he who first suggested that they should rejoin the company of the ladies. He came out wonderfully so soon as games were started, but it appeared he could do little without the assistance of the eldest daughter. Together they gave an exhibition of thought-reading, and after whispered consultation, he, being out of the room whilst the children selected 4 figures, came in when called, and standing at the doorway whilst she appealed for order, gave the exact figures. Even Uncle Henry had to admit himself flabbergasted. Do tell us how it's done. Please. Don't believe you know yourselves. They declared it a secret which could not be lightly shared, but in giving way to the general appeal, explained that if the first figure was, say, 1, then she had used a sentence beginning with the first letter of the alphabet, such as, all quiet, please. If the next was 2, she said, be quiet, please. If the next was 3, can't you be quiet? And so on. Parcels came in now, and strings were cut, and presents given to the owner of the day. She thanked him very prettily for the brooch and pinned it at once near to her neck. He followed her out of the room to help in carrying the brown paper, and to tell her that, when his birthday came, she could reciprocate by offering him the precious gift of herself. The quarrel had been all his fault. He was bending down to touch her lips when, no thank you, he said, tearing up the 4th slip. The present time is good enough for me. Is this the way out? Interesting to observe, remarked the voice, as the curtain went back and showed the exit, that our clients, however dissatisfied they may be in entering, are always perfectly content when they depart.